From the nation's capital, Eye on Washington with Marilee Joyce. A weekly discussion about the federal issues most important to Nevada. And now, from Washington, D.C., here's Marilee Joyce.
And good day to you. I'm Marilee Joyce, and this is Eye on Washington. It's the only statewide Nevada news program produced in Washington, D.C. Every week, Eye on Washington takes you straight to Capitol Hill for a discussion with Nevada's leaders and other members about the federal matters that matter most to you. Today's topic, pain relief for man's best friend. We're going to find out what one Nevada leader is doing to eliminate some of the VA's painful tests on dogs. My guest today is Nevada U.S. Congresswoman Dina Titus. And our special guest, Mr. Justin Goodman. He is the Vice President of Advocacy and Policy for the White Coat Waste Project. The White Coat Waste Project exposes taxpayer-funded animal experiments and advocates cutting federal spending used for them. Thanks so much for joining us today.
Thank you for having us, yeah.
The VA has failed to name a single veteran-focused medical advancement that has ever resulted from dog testing in nearly 100 years of VA research. That strong statement comes from the founder of the DisabledVeterans.org. And today on Eye on Washington, we'll look at what these little talked about dog experiments that many say are very painful to canines. We'll learn about Congresswoman Titus's work on the Hill to end them, and we'll find out how she works with organizations like that of my guest, Mr. Goodman, to support better treatment of dogs and other animals. Now, that quote I cited comes from Disabled.org founder and Air Force veteran Benjamin Krause. He made the statement last November when my guest, the Congresswoman, announced her intention to put a stop at what she calls cruel and ineffective experiment on dogs. Focus on all this comes after an expose by Mr. Goodman's organization documenting what it calls egregious animal abuses, transparency deficiencies, and oversight failures in the VA dog experimentation laboratories. And last year, the Office of Research Oversight at the Department of Veterans Affairs reportedly found evidence of extensive violation of federal animal welfare regulations, internal policies, and research protocols at the McGuire VA Medical Center in Richmond, Virginia. Now, Congresswoman, we're going to get to a big effort of yours to stop all this and protect dogs from those tests in our next segment. But I want to provide some background for now. What got you involved in all this?
Well, I've always been a very strong advocate for protection of animals, going back to the time I was in the state legislature. I went after the puppy mills in Nevada, you may recall, and some of the pet shop violations. So this is something dear to my heart. My sister has practically a petting zoo in her backyard. We've always had animals in our family, and I believe that the way you treat animals also translates into the way you treat people.
How about you, Mr. Goodman? How did your organization get onto this? Isn't it kind of how this all started? And I believe you told me it was 2014 that this started going strong?
White Coat Waste, in a lot of ways, is a startup. There's a lot of establishment animal groups in Washington that have been at it for a long time. But we thought that there was a void because animal issues are not partisan. They're probably the most nonpartisan issue you can find. Everyone loves animals. Everyone wants to protect animals from harm. But there's been a tendency for the issue to get politicized on the Hill and seen as something liberal when it's not. It's an issue for everybody. So what White Coat Waste Project does is tries to bring in folks in the center and right to show that this is an issue that they should care about too, because not only is it an issue of compassion and anti-cruelty, but when it comes to animal testing, it's a government waste issue. A lot of people don't realize that, at least in my social media feed, for instance, I see lots of people posting about cosmetics testing being the #1 problem when it comes to animal tests in the U.S. But in truth, that's really not a problem anymore. It's the government funding $20 billion of animal tests in the United States a year. That's the biggest culprit, and that's where the problem needs to be addressed.
Congresswoman, how did you learn that this much money was going toward this?
Well, it's been my pleasure to work with the White Coats Project. They have a lot of good information, and you saw the statement from the Veterans Organization saying nothing has come of this. Not only are they spending taxpayer dollars doing cruel things to animals, but to no end. They've not gotten any good results. And we know that there are a lot of other ways that you can do medical testing now with synthetic materials and tissues and electronics and high-tech things. So why not do that where you can have some results and have a good expenditure of money?
You know, I hate to bring the audience down learning about these things, and yet it is important to highlight them. Mr. Goodman, why don't you share with us some examples of experiments that are so wrong?
Sure. So in particular at the VA, it's one of a few federal agencies that are doing experiments on dogs, like Griffin, who is here on Capitol Hill with us today, actually lobbying for Congresswoman
Who we're going to introduce. We're going to introduce in our fourth segment.
Titus's effort to stop dog testing at the VA.
And a very effective lobbyist, too, I might say.
We'll let her stand there. So the VA is the only agency in the federal government conducting what Congresswoman Titus and others have been calling maximum pain experiments. And these are things like injecting latex into puppies' arteries to give them heart attacks and forcing them on to run on treadmills to stress their hearts and then killing them, cutting open their brains, all manners of horrible abuses visited on 5-month-old puppies at some of these VA facilities.
Did you say 20 billion with a B?
20 billion across all of the government's animal testing.
Wow.
Yeah, it's an astonishing number. Congresswoman Titus obviously knows these stats, but a lot of members of Congress don't realize how much money is going into these projects that aren't paying off for taxpayers.
Wow, and when we return, why don't we find out about the Congresswoman's bill to put an end to this kind of dog testing? We'll have the details right after this.
You're watching Eye on Washington with Marilee Joyce, brought to you by Caesars Entertainment, the Regional Transportation Commission of Washoe County, the Las Vegas Sands Corporation, the Las Vegas Convention and Visitors Authority, NV Energy, Jim Marsh Automotive and Body Shop, the Rogich Communications Group, and Renown Health.
I have 3 tests next week. I'm going to be studying all weekend. Ugh. Are you studying tonight? We can meet up and study together. Oh, yeah, that sounds good. What time? I work until 6. Okay, sounds good. Just text me after. Okay. No!
There is no text, tweet, or call that's worth a life.
One pedestrian death is one too many.
Look up.
And look out for each other.
Want more federal news that affects Nevada, its businesses, and its residents? Then you need to subscribe to Nevada's Washington Watch newsletter, your sole source of online news direct from Washington, D.C. Visit joycecommunications.com and subscribe today.
It takes less than 1 minute to find out if you may have prediabetes. You can do it here. But I get it, you're busy, and busy people can't have prediabetes. I read that wrong. They can, okay? Just go to the site.
Planet Hollywood, Paris, Harrah's, Caesar's Palace. It's one of the most exciting skylines in the world, Las Vegas. Caesars Entertainment has nearly 50 casinos worldwide, including these. But no matter which casino you visit, we want you to play responsibly. And if you need help setting or keeping a limit, we hope you'll call this number. You see, we know you're coming to our casinos to have a good time, and we always want you to leave feeling like you did.
A family's presence in the hospital helps children heal faster and cope better. But children who need specialized medical care are often sent out of the Reno area for treatment. Costs can get unmanageable, and it can be difficult for families to accompany their sick child. The Travel for Treatment program, presented by Ronald McDonald House Charities Northern Nevada, gives parents travel assistance when a child's medical treatment is not available at a local hospital. Please contact us today for more information and to see how you can help. Donate online at rmhc-reno.org.
Welcome back to Eye on Washington, our look at an effort on Capitol Hill to end what my guest says are unnecessary and painful tests performed on dogs by the VA. My guests today, of course, are Nevada U.S. Congresswoman Dina Titus and Mr. Justin Goodman, the Vice President of Advocacy and Policy for the White Coat Waste Project. Well, let's look now at legislation my guest, the Congresswoman, is pushing that would stop these painful dog experiments. Late last year, Congresswoman Titus and Virginia U.S. Congressman Dave Bratt introduced the bipartisan Preventing Unkind and Painful Procedures and Experiments on Respected Species, or PUPPERS Act. The bill, which is co-sponsored by many veterans in Congress, aims to end the two most painful categories of dog experiments at the VA, including experiments in which pain relief is withheld from dogs. The PUPPERS Act allows non-painful canine research and any research related to service and working dogs. Last July, the House unanimously passed a bipartisan amendment co-sponsored by Congresswoman Titus to cut funding for painful dog experiments in fiscal year 2018. So, Congresswoman, one thing I found really interesting in my research for this show was this quote from Vets First in a letter endorsed by 3 national veterans groups, and here it is. It says, "We are concerned by the apparent lack of evidence that the VA's past and ongoing canine research, particularly projects involving causing dogs pain and distress, some of which is not relieved, has led to effective and accessible treatments or cures for veteran-specific illnesses." So supporters of these experiments that you're trying to end might have a leg to stand on if they were producing results that led anywhere, but they're not.
Well, exactly.
And they probably still wouldn't really.
So that just adds insult to injury, that you are doing these awful experiments. Nobody knows exactly how much money and where it's going, and they have nothing to show for it. We want to do a service to our veterans, so let's do some kind of research that make a difference for them. For example, on marijuana, if you want to talk about veteran ailments, PTSD, but this kind of experiment that has no results and is cruel on top of that just should be stopped.
You know, Mr. Goodman, the Congresswoman's partner in this, Congressman Bratt, he issued this statement upon introduction of the bill. He said, quote, "The revelations regarding dog laboratory testing at McGuire VAMC are disturbing, and the descriptions are almost on the scale of torture." What do you think of that description? Would you find it accurate, first of all?
Yeah, if someone outside of a government lab did this to a dog, they'd be locked up. And instead, they're getting promotions.
Well,
the guy at the Richmond VA, who was their VA's own, quote, reckless and killed a bunch of dogs with botched surgeries, had to be banned from dog experiments. Wow. They're still letting him perform procedures on veterans, and they also gave him a raise and a bonus. So the incentive program, the incentives for not only progressing beyond this research, but for even abiding by the minimal rules that exist are just not there. So there's this wasteful research, it's abusive to dogs, the law is being violated, and we're giving people a raise.
Congresswoman, tell us a little more about the bill. First of all, how is, quote, significant pain or distress defined?
Well, I think you heard the description that Justin gave about the latex and stopping the hearts. I don't think that needs defining. That's pretty obvious on the surface. But we like the acronym PUPPERS. That took some doing, and I thank Justin for helping us come up with that, because it puts it right out front what we're going after. We were successful in getting a part of that bill as an amendment to the Appropriations Act out of the House. But then, of course, all those bills have just stalled in the Senate. So that's why we're pushing on a number of fronts, pushing with the legislation, pushing with amendments, and also trying to get the GAO to do a study of what's going on, so we'll have additional information to back up our cause.
Mr. Goodman, I also read that the bill does not pertain to any physical exam, training program, or study relating to service or working dogs. Help our audience understand the differences there.
Correct. So the federal government has a variety of different categories for research, mainly to categorize it based on how much pain is involved. The PUPPERS Act that Congresswoman Titus introduced tries to affect the two most painful categories, as you mentioned. So these are experiments where significant pain is induced and treated, and also experiments where significant pain is induced but not treated. So those are those maximum pain experiments. So we're not looking to interfere with research on the effectiveness of service dogs for veterans, for instance. We have no problem with that. We all support that. We have no interest in interfering with anything related to training working dogs and service dogs. No problem with that either. This is about ending torturous experiments, as Dave Bratt called them, on dogs in the VA at taxpayer expense that are not helping anyone and actually harming veterans because they're wasting resources.
Congresswoman, as Mr. Goodman said, this is certainly a bipartisan issue. Everybody, we would hope, loves dogs. Is there any opposition to this bill?
Well, there will be some opposition from people who support animal testing, just in general, but we argue that they don't have anything to prove from this testing, so you can't make that kind of medical advancement argument that you sometimes hear. You know, at least 75% of people in this country have pets, and so this is something that gets an awful lot of public support, and we're encouraging people to write to their congressman to be sure we can counter any opposition that's out there.
Okay, and when we return, just what is the White Coat Project, and how is this Washington-based group helping the Congresswoman to protect dogs from pain? We're going to find out right after this.
Nevada's direct link to Capitol Hill. Eye on Washington with Marilee Joyce. The only statewide Nevada news show based in Washington, D.C. All the top federal matters that matter most to Nevadans. Marilee talks with our congressional delegation and other leaders about the federal news you need to know. Eye on Washington with Marilee Joyce. Nevada's Eye on Capitol Hill.
When you think RTC, what comes to mind? How about jobs? RTC road projects bring thousands of jobs to Washoe County, expanding and connecting northern Nevada, growing our local economy, providing a more secure future for our residents and their families. So when you think jobs, think RTC, your RTC, the RTC of Washoe County.
We're not a miracle drug. We're not a technology. We're not doctors. Just the hope, which can often be the best cure of all. The Ronald McDonald House, a home away from home for seriously ill children and their families.
Planet Hollywood, Paris, Harrah's, Caesar's Palace. It's one of the most exciting skylines in the world, Las Vegas. Caesars Entertainment has nearly 50 casinos worldwide, including these. But no matter which casino you visit, we want you to play responsibly. And if you need help setting or keeping a limit, we hope you'll call this number. You see, we know you're coming to our casinos to have a good time, and we always want you to leave feeling like you did.
Can I tell you a cat joke? Just kidding. Why did the girl ask the mushroom to dance? Because he was a fun guy. What do you call a pig that knows karate? Pork chop. So how does a tissue dance? Put a little boogie on
it. Safety. We all think about it. You think about it when he buckles in, when you check your mirrors and put away your phone. RTC thinks about safety too. In fact, we create it. Center turn lanes mean fewer blind spots. Bike lanes keep cyclists and you safe. Roundabouts reduce injury collisions, and all these crosswalks are designed to keep families like yours safe. Safety is your priority, and it's ours too. Every day, in everything we do.
And welcome back to Eye on Washington, our discussion of efforts on the Hill to stop painful testing on dogs. We've been visiting with Nevada U.S. Congresswoman Dina Titus and Mr. Justin Goodman, the Vice President of Advocacy and Policy for the White Coat Waste Project. So just what is the Washington, D.C.-based White Coat Waste Project, and why is Congresswoman Titus partnering with them to help animals? Well, the White Coat Waste Project is focused on stopping taxpayer-funded experiments on dogs, monkeys, cats, and other animals. They lobby for cutting of federal funding and that they say goes toward hurting animals. According to the group's website, the problem of cruel experimentation, quote, is so big that no one knows how much taxpayer money is spent on animal experiments each year, who is spending it, or how many animals are used and killed. White Coat further claims there is virtually no accountability or transparency, and that, quote, animal experiments hop on the animal experimenters hop on the gravy train and often ride it for decades at great expense to taxpayers without producing anything of value, drawing resources from meaningful research and public health programs. So, Mr. Goodman, it seems like a great organization you have there. I want to know where and why you started it.
So we are trying to make this truly what it is, a bipartisan, nonpartisan issue. Because Republicans, Independents, and Democrats all oppose animal cruelty, oppose government waste, and this is an issue that's at the nexus of all of that. Animal testing is mainly a government spending problem. We have the National Institutes of Health on one hand saying that 95% of drugs that work in animals fail in humans because they don't work or they're dangerous. 95% failure rate. Wow. And at the same time, it's spending half of its $32 billion budget, which is about $15 billion, $16 billion, on animal testing. So on one hand, it's saying it fails 95% of the time, and on the other hand, it's spending half of its budget on it, and we're not seeing the benefits of that. So even if someone supports animal testing, for instance, this is not a problem that's going to be solved by throwing more money at it.
You know, regarding the bill that the two of you are working on together, I read that you've taken it even beyond Congress and that you have 43,000 military veterans that have signed on to this bill already.
I think probably at least that when you combine all of the different national organizations, including the Retired Enlisted Association, Vets First you mentioned, Veterans for Common Sense just signed on to the bill this week. And these vets, again, are concerned that they can't even get a doctor's appointment, and here the VA is paying a $300,000 salary to someone who tortures dogs to no one's benefit except their own.
And billions and billions and billions toward the testing. Congresswoman, how did you and Mr. Goodman get together on this in the first place?
Well, we've worked together on other animal issues besides the dog testing, and it was just a natural alliance. I value the work that the organization does. I respect him as an individual. You know, you have to figure out who you can trust on the Hill and who gives you good information, and this organization does that. So it's baby monkeys, it's dog leather, it's a number of things, but this is our priority right now. And like the veterans who are joining us, not only do they see it as a waste of money for not doing something to help them, but many veterans see dogs as helping them with PTSD or work with dogs on the battlefield.
Yeah, we've done extensive polling showing that a majority of veterans support this effort. 75% of taxpayers overall support it. Yeah.
And when we come back, why should Nevadans care about the Congresswoman's bill to spare dog pain in experiments? We're going to ask her right after this.
Planet Hollywood, Paris, Harrah's, Caesar's Palace. It's one of the most exciting skylines in the world, Las Vegas. Caesars Entertainment has nearly 50 casinos worldwide, including these. But no matter which casino you visit, we want you to play responsibly. And if you need help setting or keeping a limit, we hope you'll call this number. You see, we know you're coming to our casinos to have a good time, and we always want you to leave feeling like you did.
Nevada's direct link to Capitol Hill. Eye on Washington with Marilee Joyce. The only statewide Nevada news show based in Washington, D.C. All the top federal matters that matter most to Nevadans. Marilee talks with our congressional delegation and other leaders about the federal news you need to know. Eye on Washington with Marilee Joyce. Nevada's Eye on Capitol Hill.
Hamilton was adopted from a rescue in 2008. He's quite the pug about town. He gets invited to a lot of parties. He knows he's a pretty big deal. How could you not love him?
Are you studying tonight? We can meet up and study together.
Just text me after.
Okay. No!
There is no text, tweet, or call that's worth a life.
One pedestrian death is one too many.
Look up. And look out for each other.
This girl is very pretty. It's inciting feelings of jealousy in me. We should pick on her.
I'm insecure about some things, so I think we should put some me stuff on here. Maybe even some lies, too.
Yeah. I just want to be accepted by you both. So I'm going to send this to my friends so they think I'm cool.
Kids bully for all kinds of reasons. None of them are good. Find ways to get involved at flipthescriptnow.org.
Want more federal news that affects Nevada, its businesses, and its residents? Then you need to subscribe to Nevada's Washington Watch newsletter, your sole source of online news direct from Washington, D.C. Visit joycecommunications.com and subscribe today.
And it is time for our closing segment of today's Eye on Washington. We've had as our guest today Nevada U.S. Congresswoman Dina Titus and Mr. Justin Goodman, the Vice President of Advocacy and Policy for the White Coast Waste Project, and Griffin, the spokesdog for the organization. Now, in 2011, Congresswoman, Governor Sandoval signed into law a bill making the most heinous acts of cruelty against dogs, cats, and companion animals a felony on the first offense. How does your bill, does it complement this, improve on it by spotlighting the VA? How does that kind of all come together?
Much of the animal cruelty legislation is at the state level, and I totally support what the legislature and the governor did. But we focus on veterans and federal government abuse, and so I think it's a nice complement to what's going on at that level.
And Mr. Goodman, this bill certainly obviously has your full support and partnership. Beyond this effort, of course, though, what else is the White Coat Waste Project working on this year and beyond?
Well, I have to say, Congresswoman Titus has been
Now look at that face. How could you be cruel to that?
It's our first pet on, first pet that we know of on Eye on Washington. Go on.
Congresswoman Titus has been leading a wide variety of efforts that we've been involved in.
There he goes.
Congresswoman Titus has been involved as a leader on a wide variety of efforts, all focused on addressing this government animal testing problem because it's so massive. And like you said, we simply don't have the information about what's going on, where the money's going, what's happening to animals. So in addition to the Puppers Act, there's a bill called the FACT Act that the Congresswoman helped introduce that will increase transparency about the use of animals in government testing. And also the Congresswoman led an effort that secured a federal government audit of all government testing happening in federal laboratories. How many animals are used, for what it costs, and why it's so darn difficult for even someone like Congresswoman Titus or any other member to get basic information. So
I think you have a new publicist. I think that we need to have the two of you back together.
Well, we're a good team.
This is, in all seriousness, a lot of important legislation that helps animals, and I'm really appreciative of you two coming on today. Thanks you very much. And that does wrap up this week's Eye on Washington. I hope you'll join us next time for another important look at how federal matters matter to you in Nevada. In the meantime, though, we're always here for you, providing all the federal news Nevadans need to know. Just go to our website, joycecommunications.com. While you're there, you can like us on Facebook, you can follow me on Twitter, and catch up with any shows you may have missed on our YouTube channel. That's it for this week's Eye on Washington. Thanks for joining us today. Have a good day.
Thank you for watching Eye on Washington with Marilee Joyce. Eye on Washington with Marilee Joyce airs statewide in Nevada solely due to the generosity of our sponsors. Can your company help us continue our mission to remain Nevada's top source of federal news? If you can help us help Nevadans, please visit joycecommunications.com/WordPress/EOW sponsors and join us today. That's joycecommunications.com/WordPress/EOW sponsors.